Jagged streaks of electric white light fracture the obsidian canopy of the heavens, illuminating the landscape in violent bursts. Raheem stands paralyzed on the threshold of his home, his frame silhouetted against the warm glow of the interior. His gaze is riveted to the small, shivering figure of an elderly woman drenched by the relentless downpour, totally oblivious to the fact that this brittle wanderer harbors a revelation potent enough to dismantle the foundations of his existence. A trembling, weathered hand rises with agonizing slowness toward the entrance. Her plea for sanctuary is a mere whisper, struggling to bridge the distance through the cacophony of the tempest. Within Raheem, a fierce internal conflict rages. He is suspended in the agonizing space between primal self-preservation and the innate call of human compassion. He has no inkling that this solitary heartbeat of indecision is the catalyst that will fundamentally alter the trajectory of both their lives. Before we proceed into the heart of this mystery, please share with us in the comments section what the clock says where you are and from which corner of the globe you are joining us. Now, let the narrative unfold. The silence is shattered as a vehicle thunders through a nearby puddle, sending a violent cascade of brackish water toward the porch. Instinctive gallantry overrides Raheem's caution. He lunges forward, his fingers closing around the woman's frail arm to steady her, unknowingly pulling himself across the threshold of a hidden and perilous reality. Once inside the shadowed foyer, he proffers a dry towel, but the visitor's sharp, analytical eyes do not linger on the offering. Instead, they scan the perimeter of the room with a cold, predatory precision, as if she is committing every exit and structural detail to memory. A behavior that betrays a mind far more formidable than her withered exterior suggests. Outside, the heavens groan with another roar of thunder as a sleek, midnight-colored sedan glides to a ghostly halt on the distant, rain-slicked road. Unobserved by Raheem, the woman's grip on her belongings tightens with a sudden, controlled intensity, her facial muscles shifting for a fleeting second into an expression of sharp, calculated authority. A porcelain cup of steaming tea now rests on the table between them. Raheem's hands betray a slight tremor as he sets it down, while the mysterious guest scrutinizes him in a heavy silence, appearing to weigh his character and worth on an invisible scale. Far down the driveway, the menacing silhouette of the black car is swallowed by the shifting curtains of the storm. A singular, hushed inquiry finally severs the tension. What drives a man to seek such profound isolation? The ensuing pause is thick and suffocating, laying bare emotional scars that run deeper than any spoken word could convey. For a moment, the woman's piercing stare loses its edge, softening just enough to mask a darker, more complex motive lurking beneath the surface. The stillness is abruptly detonated by a violent, rhythmic pounding against the front door. The sound seems to flash freeze the very oxygen in the room. The stranger's fingers constrict around her teacup with such force that her fragile facade nearly crumbles under the weight of the rising atmospheric pressure. Raheem approaches the door, pulling it open with hesitant slowness. He finds nothing but the howling wind. The only evidence of a presence is the deep, jagged ruts carved into the mire and the retreating crimson glow of taillights vanishing into the gloom. Behind him, the woman remains perfectly motionless, her unblinking eyes fixed on his back. He secures the latch, but a thick sense of dread refuses to dissipate. When she speaks again, her tone has undergone a chilling transformation. It is firmer, more resonant, and devoid of its earlier quiver. She asks if he believes in the inevitability of destiny. In that moment, the illusion of her vulnerability evaporates entirely. A wave of profound bewilderment washes over Raheem as he observes the sudden metamorphosis in her demeanor. He is deeply unsettled by the newfound iron in her voice. The woman sips her tea with deliberate grace, never once breaking eye contact, effectively weaponizing a simple philosophical question into a probing, personal interrogation. Suddenly, the sharp, staccato vibration of a smartphone on the tabletop cuts through the air. Raheem reaches for it, but her reflexes are unervingly superior. her gaze snaps to the device with a tactical precision that is entirely inconsistent with her supposed age and frailty. Raheem answers the call with a voice thick with apprehension, stepping slightly away to gain a modicum of privacy. In the shadows behind him, the woman's physical stature alters subtly but unmistakably. Her previously slumped shoulders square themselves, revealing a hidden pillar of command beneath the rags of her disguise. On the other end of the line, a panicked voice crackles, "There are unidentified individuals encroaching on your boundaries." Raheem's hand tightens instinctively around the receiver. In the dim corner of the room, the silent guest continues to eavesdrop, a ghostly, enigmatic smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The connection severs, but the environment has become irrevocably altered. The air feels dense, charged with a magnetic tension. The woman's presence has expanded to fill the room, her control over the situation shifting with a quiet, invisible grace. In a desperate bid to reclaim some semblance of normalcy, Raheem offers her a modest plate of food. He forces a polite smile, but she declines with a gentle yet firm gesture, her eyes remaining locked on his as if she is privy to a secret he has yet to discover. She then strikes with a question about the ownership of the surrounding land, a question far too pointed and informed to be accidental. Before Raheem can formulate a response, the room is suddenly invaded by a blinding torrent of white light. Headlights from an approaching vehicle wash over the walls, casting long, distorted shadows. Their reactions are polar opposites. The woman remains a statue of icy composure, while Raheem is gripped by a surging, frantic alarm. As the rain continues its relentless assault, Raheem bolts out into the night, leaving the stranger alone in his living room. However, she displays no fear. She stands up with fluid ease, the performance of the frail old woman falling away to reveal a woman of commanding stature. Outside, the black sedan waits in the mud, its engine emitting a low, predatory hum. As Raheem's boots crunch closer through the gravel, the engine dies instantly, plunging the area into a terrifying silence. He feels the chilling sensation of unseen eyes tracking his every heartbeat. He circles the dormant machine, his pulse thundering in his ears like a war drum, only to find the interior completely hollow. The only occupant is a lingering, expensive fragrance that smells of high society elegance, a scent that feels grotesquely out of place in the muddy, frigid air. Inside the house, a silhouette moves toward the window with purpose. Gone is the cane, gone is the simulated weakness. The woman stands with a spine like steel, watching the drama unfold in the yard with the detached interest of a master strategist. Outside, Raheem notices a trail of fresh footprints leading away from the vehicle and into the impenetrable density of the forest. Hesitation gnaws at him, but the crack of thunder above acts like a starting pistol, propelling him toward a choice that feels final and irreversible. Back within the walls of the cottage, the woman lifts the old, tattered umbrella. She folds it away with clinical efficiency to reveal a hidden, sophisticated metallic apparatus. Her expression is now one of cold, deliberate calculation. Raheem takes his first steps into the thicket, unaware that from the high window, he is being observed with total, absolute oversight. As he moves deeper into the woodland, the canopy overhead weeps heavy droplets of cold rain. With every yard gained, the weight of suspicion grows heavier in his gut. The darkness ceases to feel like the natural world, it feels like an architectural construct designed to observe him. A sharp, crystalline snap of a twig erupts from the silence. Raheem spins around, his breath hitching, but he finds only the oppressive void and the frantic echo of his own respiration. Simultaneously, back at the farmhouse, the woman depresses a single button on her device. Somewhere in a high-tech facility miles away, a bank of monitors flickers into vibrant life. It becomes immediately clear, this humble dwelling was never a random destination. Deep within the labyrinth of trees, Raheem spots a rhythmic, crimson blinking light emanating from behind an ancient oak. Despite the terror screaming in his mind, a morbid curiosity overrides his survival instinct. He reaches out toward the pulsating glow, but just as his fingers are about to make contact, the light vanishes. The forest is plunged into a total, suffocating darkness. In the house, the woman lowers her device. Every move he makes has been choreographed in advance. Panic strikes like a physical blow. Raheem recoils, the realization dawning on him that the light was merely a lure. He begins to back away, but the forest seems to have contracted around him. The familiar path back to the clearing has been swallowed by the gloom as if it never existed. Suddenly, a concentrated beam of light lances through the blackness, illuminating a high-tech surveillance camera mounted high on a trunk. The truth hits him with the force of a tidal wave: his isolation was a myth. He has been under a microscope from the very beginning. Inside the residence, the woman moves toward a corner of the room. With a soft hiss of hydraulics, a concealed panel slides away from the rustic wooden planks. Her movements are sharp, athletic, and authoritative. The phone in the forest begins to chime again, its electronic ring sounding alien against the backdrop of the wild. When Raheem answers, a voice of terrifying calm delivers a single, chilling instruction: "It would be wise for you to return to the house immediately." He lowers the device slowly, a cold knot of dread tightening in his stomach. The voice carried a hauntingly familiar cadence. Far away, behind the glowing screens, the observer watches his reaction, knowing that the tapestry of lies is beginning to unravel. Raheem turns in a slow circle, scanning the tree-line with escalating terror. He realizes now that every footstep was logged, every pulse spike recorded. Even the silence of the woods feels engineered. Behind the hidden walls of the farmhouse, multiple high-definition feeds display various angles of his frantic movements. The woman answers another ringing phone, her voice now deep, commanding, and stripped of all artifice. Back in the woods, a tiny, lethal red dot appears on the fabric of Raheem's jacket. He freezes, the weight of the situation crushing the air from his lungs. This is no longer a simple surveillance operation, he is now a designated target. A soft whisper echoes in the high-tech control room: "Not yet." Instantly, the tension holds, suspended in a state of artificial stasis. It is a terrifying demonstration of her absolute dominion over his life. The laser sight vanishes as abruptly as it appeared. Raheem gasps for air, but the ensuing quiet is even more menacing, as if the environment is waiting for a more opportune moment to strike. In the hidden hub, a finger glides over a touchscreen, and a new data stream appears, marking Raheem's exact coordinates with surgical accuracy. A faint sound of rhythmic footsteps reaches his ears. He whirls around, but the darkness remains empty. The epiphany finally arrives: even his fear is a tool being used against him. Inside the house, the woman stands before a massive, hidden display that has transitioned from camera feeds to complex financial algorithms and global logistical maps. Her true identity begins to emerge, something far grander and more formidable than Raheem could have ever dreamed. In the forest, Raheem's resolve finally snaps. He turns and sprints back toward the cottage, realizing with a jolt of horror that his departure was a tactical error. Unseen lenses track his desperate retreat. The climax is approaching. He reaches the door, his lungs burning and his heart hammering against his ribs. Instinct screams that the entity waiting inside is far more lethal than the shadows he just fled. The door creaks open, but the world he knew has been replaced. The shivering, elderly guest is gone. In her place stands a woman of undeniable power and elegance, positioned dead center in the room, waiting for him. She takes a single, predatory step forward, her gaze as sharp as a diamond. She asks a question that strips away all pretenses: "Tell me, Raheem, why did you choose to help?" The question turns the entire night into a deeply personal and calculated psychological assessment. Raheem fumbles for words, attempting to articulate a simple truth about human decency, but his voice fails him under her scrutinizing stare. She is weighing his soul against a standard he doesn't yet understand. Without another syllable, she turns and gestures toward the now exposed control center. It is a clear invitation, the time for deception has ended. As Raheem enters the glowing room, his mind reels. The modest farmhouse has been hollowed out to contain a nerve center of incredible sophistication. The woman moves through the space with the grace of someone who owns the world. As she approaches the consoles, the systems hum in recognition, the interfaces responding to her biometric signature. A gargantuan screen illuminates, displaying the intricate, interconnected webs of global finance. Raheem is paralyzed by the scale of the power on display. She turns to him, her composure unshakable, and lays out the cold reality. Nothing about this night was accidental. His choices were merely paths through a pre-constructed maze. She plays a recording. It is his own voice from earlier that night, replayed with perfect clarity. Every sigh, every word of kindness, has been archived since the moment he opened the door. She moves closer, and the revelation cuts deeper into his psyche. This entire ordeal was a crucible, a test of character. His reflexive act of compassion toward a stranger has triggered a sequence of events with global implications. A heavy silence descends as Raheem tries to process the magnitude of the situation. His initial fear begins to transmute into a mixture of profound confusion and a simmering, quiet indignation. She gestures toward a secondary screen, showing a gallery of other faces, men and women who were placed in similar accidents. These were the ones who failed the test. Their outcomes were catastrophic, illustrating how thin the line is between salvation and ruin. The question finally erupts from Raheem's throat: why me? His voice is loud, demanding an explanation for the violation of his life. The silence that follows is pregnant with gravity. Then, she reveals the truth. She has spent years searching through countless candidates, looking for the one rare individual who would act out of pure, unadulterated kindness without a thought for personal gain or reward. And now, the world is about to shift. She steps into the full light of the room, her commanding aura now undisputed. She is the architect of the empire he sees on the screens, the invisible hand that moves markets and shapes nations. Behind her, images of glittering skyscrapers, private armadas, and global headquarters cycle through, confirming that the fragile woman is, in fact, a titan of industry and wealth. Her explanation is devoid of sentimentality. This was never an exercise in wealth, she states. It was a search for humanity. You demonstrated a strength of character that even the most powerful men in the world have lacked. Raheem recoils, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of the truth. His life has been irrevocably shattered. Then comes the proposition. It isn't just a monetary prize, it is an invitation into her inner circle, a seat at the table of the gods. He stands at the precipice of a life of unimaginable influence. His gaze falls to the floor as a fierce internal conflict takes hold. He realizes that by stepping into her world, he might lose the very thing that made him worthy of the test, his simple, honest life. For the first time, a new kind of fear takes root, not a fear of death, but a fear of losing himself. There is no coercion, no threat. There is only a choice. The woman's voice softens, making it clear that this decision will be the defining moment of his existence. Raheem walks slowly toward the exit, glancing back one last time at the glowing temple of power. He is torn between the familiar comfort of his solitude and the intoxicating lure of the unknown. He steps outside. The rain has begun to subside into a light mist, and the smell of ozone and wet earth fills his lungs. The world he once thought was large now feels incredibly fragile and small. From the shadows of the doorway, the woman watches him. She makes no move to interfere, for she knows that the choice must be his alone. He stands in the damp morning air, his eyes closed as he conjures the memories of his quiet life, his garden, and his peace. The offer behind him feels like an anchor, heavy and cold. Finally, he opens his eyes and turns back toward the house. His face is not lit with the fire of ambition, but with a serene, quiet resolve. He walks back inside, his footsteps echoing with certainty, and stops before the woman. With a steady voice, he explains that he cannot exchange his integrity for a life of calculated control. For the first time that night, the woman's expression softens into one of genuine, profound respect. She realizes that he has achieved something she could never purchase. He has mastered himself. She nods in silent acknowledgement, telling him that he passed the final stage of the test not by seizing the power, but by having the strength to walk away from it. This is where true authority resides, in the ability to be content without the world's baubles. She walks past him toward the entrance, leaving a final, unspoken thought hanging in the air. Raheem stands still, unsure if he has just forfeited his future or secured his soul. As she steps onto the porch, a silent convoy of armored black vehicles emerges from the fog, surrounding the house with military precision. It is the final proof that her world was always there, lurking just out of sight. She looks back at him one last time, her eyes conveying a silent message of admiration before she vanishes into the lead car. The engines roar to life, and the convoy disappears into the misty horizon. Raheem steps out into the birth of a new morning. His world is the same as it was yesterday, yet it feels infinitely richer. He looks at his calloused hands, then at the rising sun, understanding at last that the most profound wealth was never in the room behind him. It was the capacity for kindness he had carried in his heart all along. Real prosperity isn't measured in currency, status, or dominion over others. It is found in the choices you make when you think no one is looking. The world can offer you the keys to a kingdom, but your internal compass determines if you are truly free. If this narrative resonated with you, please engage by liking, sharing, and leaving a comment. Kindness is the ultimate victory, because true heroes don't require accolades or crowns, they are defined by the courage of their choices.